is the remix. The Jeeps pump this new remix. This is the
Well, hello, Laverne. I haven't seen you in forever.
Girl, yes, I'm back. So I miss you.
I miss you too.
So this is
This is Exposed with Natalie Hayden.
and Laverne Badger, and we have a special guest here for you. But we also want to just start off by saying it is April. Which is Sexual Assault Month.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as you know, that we want to make sure that we highlight certain things that are happening in our community and the nation, and sexual assault is a huge issue in our community, and so we just wanted to bring to you guys during April an amazing a woman who is going to talk about some taboo things, and so that's where Exposed comes in.
Yes. And you know, with Exposed, we have Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and our scope of things is typically around education, prevention, and awareness.
Yeah.
And we have Dr. Sean with us to help us figure out what are some ways us as individuals, communities, and societies we can be aware and focus on those methods and techniques so we can protect not just ourselves,
Right.
but protect our young ones, protect people that are within our community, as well as how do we not be bystanders. So I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I'm just really excited.
Right. So, and Dr. Sean is amazing. Her story is amazing, and so we are going to allow you to tell us who you are, Dr. Sean.
Yes. Well, thank you, ladies, for having me, Laverne and Natalie. I'm Dr. Sean Lewis. I'm a motivational speaker, book author, community advocate for women's health and wellness, and I'm just glad to be here.
Thank you so much for accepting our invitation
Yes,
on this
yes.
on this topic.
Yeah.
So, we are going to talk about
A couple things.
church hurt.
Yeah.
She didn't say it loud enough. She said church hurt.
Church hurt.
I know,
hurt.
like you, I just feel like I don't even want to say church hurt. Like, you
It's
know,
so taboo.
it's
really
taboo, but
Yeah.
today is being exposed.
That's
So
right.
We talking
we'll
about
be,
it today, yes.
exposed.
Definitely gonna get into it today.
And
Okay.
so, and we'll touch on a few different angles of church hurt. But because of Sexual Awareness Month, we want to make sure that we touch on that first. And so, Dr. Sean has her experience with that. That she has been. That we have the honor of showing you all and sharing with you all her story. So, here you go.
Yes. Well, I just want to say that church hurt has been a very taboo subject for years. I grew up in the church, and I'm in my 40s now, and I just saw a lot of stuff, and I felt like I was Cinderella. You know how Cinderella, the story Cinderella, how she felt like she was just used and abused and just dealing with silence and suffering and just all of that. And I finally mustered up the courage after so many layers of hurt. I mean, I've been through a lot of different churches, you know, not just growing up in the church, but just going to different churches, different events
As
and stuff.
adults.
I just saw a lot of hypocrisy. I just saw people not keeping it real. I just saw people just being fake, just being two-faced, just being flirty, living two different lifestyles.
So let's talk about that flirting
And the two different
in the
lifestyles.
church.
Yes.
We'll talk about that. And so
Yeah.
again, sexual harassment is not always physical.
Right.
That's right.
We know that sexual harassment comes in many different forms, and
The church.
and flirting, unwanted flirting, falls in that category as well. So
Yes.
so what happened with you, if you don't mind sharing?
So, like from my experience, y'all know how sometimes the older men in the wheelchairs and all of that, how they see a little young hot thing walking past. And I was about 16, and I would see a couple of the elders flirting or making statements about how I walked and stuff like that. And even one person was married and had the audacity to say to me, you know, if I wasn't married, you know, you would have been my wife or whatever. And I'm 16 and I'm still going through teenage stuff, and I'm trying to process this, but what I did is I suppressed it. But then it just made me feel like, how do I get to God when I'm seeing people You're supposed to
Right.
reflect God.
Right.
Do this. You're supposed to be showing me a difference. You're supposed to be making me feel safe. And these are men in the church doing this. And I just feel like people need to talk about that element of it, because a lot of women who are waiting for husbands or whatever,
Right.
they get disrespected, they get mistreated, abused verbally, and sometimes physically too. And so we gotta talk about this so we can know what to do.
So during that time, did you tell anybody that was?
I did. I told a relative, and I just started journaling stuff.
Okay.
And then I still was confused, because I was like, how is a person who's supposed to represent God is doing this? And then they getting right up and preaching like they ain't do nothing.
Right.
So did the adult that you told, did they do anything?
Prayed for me, which helped. Prayed for my mind, and basically was just like, keep your distance, because it was someone I looked up to. So they
So
basically,
it was addressing you for you to keep your distance,
But
Yes.
nothing.
but nothing you saw where they addressed him.
no, because it was a situation where they really didn't know him. He was like a visiting leader and stuff.
That's
so.
even more, to me, that would be easier to say, what you doing?
True.
Because you're not, first of all, hospitality.
But I addressed it afterwards, like
Okay,
after it happened.
okay.
Not in the moment, because at that time I was in fear and I was
Right,
ashamed.
right.
Stuff like that.
So speaking on the fear, because sexual assault and sexual violence usually is like stemmed from, you know, someone not speaking up and speaking out, is stemmed from fear, the fear
Yes.
of like what could potentially happen. What would you say to that young 16-year-old girl today, you being her, on ways that you could go past that fear, think beyond the fear, and say, this is how I can protect myself, and maybe another young lady who may be experiencing the same thing in the church, what would you say to her to protect herself? Now, yes.
Goodness. Now,
Speak to her right there.
I would be like, you 16-year-old, you not doctored at that time, but you need to go talk to your parents. You need to go tell them, let's go talk to the pastor of the church who's inviting this person to speak.
Yes.
And we need to talk about what the problem is. This is wrong.
So the first thing you're saying is speak up for
Speak up.
that young person that may not have that parent or that person in the church they can confide in. If they have anybody they can confide in,
Right.
is to initially speak up.
Right.
Say something.
Yes.
Say
I didn't
something.
say nothing. I just suppressed it and waited till time went past. And that's the part you don't want to do. You want to say something right away.
Right, and even if you don't say anything right away, when I do say something,
Believe me.
I need you to believe me. I need you to
Believe
support
me,
me.
yes.
I need you to be able to say that he won't be invited anymore, not to
Yes.
make me feel as if something I did wrong.
Right.
So I just thought of this. We're going to put a disclaimer out there that we're not saying all churches hurt.
That's right.
But there are many churches that are around the globe that support or turn a blind eye
That's
to
right.
certain things that are happening in regards to domestic abuse, sexual assault, molestation, if it's in regards to their leaders, you know. I think, and so we're not saying that that's for all churches.
Right.
We're just saying we're giving some of our experience and
Particularly
Dr.
with the
Sean's
priests, too.
service.
Yes,
Right.
yes,
You know,
yes.
right. So
In that community, stuff is still coming out.
Right.
The molesting of boys and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, what are you going to do about it?
absolutely.
Make
What's
them
the
sit down.
consequence? What's
Yes.
the consequence?
And I think the greatest thing that we can do is what we're doing today,
Yes.
is having a conversation about it, that this is something that is still an issue.
Yes.
And there are still individuals that are operating in this space, and there are still people that are going to be affected by it.
Right.
So we want to make sure that we talk about the prevention piece of it, the education piece of it, and the awareness piece of it. If we cover that, our viewers are definitely in a safe space where they can say, well, you know what, I think I have the tools.
Right.
Should I need to pull from that at any given point, or to reach out and lend it to a person that may have confided in them?
Yes.
Right?
So if you don't get that support, what happens? So I know that you're an author and you have written a book on church hurt,
Separated from church.
and you have also written on suicide.
Yes.
So when trauma is not addressed, it you're at a higher risk of
Suffering in silence.
yes. And so let's talk about how that church hurt can potentially put you in a place of suicide.
I used to feel suicidal. I never felt like I wanted to take my life, but I just wanted to die because I was hurting so bad. Like you said, we're not bashing churches, we're not bashing leaders, because sometimes leaders are going through things with their church members. It's just bringing an awareness that there's a group of people that are suffering, and these people need, like Ms. Natalie said, a way to get out, a way to heal. But for me, when I was going through the suicidal stuff, I just felt like I didn't want to be here no more.
Now, did that hit you as a teenager or as an adult?
My young adult years, like in my 20s.
Okay.
Because that's when you really kind of aware of everything, and you make your own. I was making my own choices to go to church,
Right.
and I'm like, this church is doing this, and this church is doing that, and that. And so, as far as the suicide piece, if people don't know, like Miss Natalie said, that they can go speak to somebody and confide in somebody, which is therapeutic for the healing, then they gonna feel like sometimes, I just don't wanna be here. Nobody loves me, nobody cares. I feel like I'm just the only one going through this. And that's what makes people feel, depression is keeping it all in.
So do you feel, so I believe it is extremely important to have spiritual guidance.
Yes,
But
definitely.
to me, what is equally important is therapeutic guidance. So
Yes.
counseling,
Yes.
self-care.
Yes.
And so do you agree that, you know, the spiritual guidance and feeding that also, in addition to that, we need to support counseling and
Oh,
make
yes.
sure that people are receiving therapy, because a
Yes.
lot of church hurt comes from not having the right resources and going, so we can have that session with our
Yes.
pastor
Yes.
or our church leader and get that fulfilled. But there's other things that we need that a therapist and a counselor needs to work together.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to say is that it needs to work together.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
You know, the church and outside education on
Yes.
how we can heal ourselves and work through some of the trauma that we have talked about and have dealt with.
So I know there are a couple churches that I am aware of, and I know one in particular. One was our first guest, Dr. Elder Melva Henderson
Yes.
of World Outreach. She has therapists
Yes.
and psychologists within the church.
Absolutely.
Powerful ministry.
Powerful
Yes.
ministry.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so that makes, you know, what she's teaching and what she's receiving, it makes it a little bit more transferable when you have someone that has the education and
Yes.
the expertise to
Yes.
back that up and say,
Yes.
well, this is on the spiritual side of it, this is how you handle it, and on this side, on the social emotional side of it, this is
Yes.
how we can tackle
To
that.
balance it all
So
together.
I love, and so that's a new shift that I'm starting to see. I don't want to say a trend, because trends go away,
Right.
but hopefully this is something that many churches can start taking lead on
Right.
and having this
Definitely.
for their people, because
Yes.
this is how your people are well-rounded and you're
Yes.
catering to the whole being, right?
Oh my
Right,
goodness,
because
that's good.
because sexual assault, you know, it's one of those really deep traumas.
Yeah.
You know, to have experienced something like that
Yeah.
would need more than a prayer.
That's
Yes.
right.
And I'm a
Need to
believer.
talk.
Yeah, and I'm a
Need some
believer that
tea.
God
Okay.
put people in your lives.
Yes.
There are therapists and psychiatrists out there that God made therapists and counselors
That's
to be
right.
out there so that they can
Yes.
do the work as to healing in a different format.
That's right.
And
Right.
so, so church as a whole is where we're supposed to get comfort.
Yes.
But we have to understand as a society that we also have to get that somewhere else. So
Yes.
with your experience with your book, Suicide Rescue, what made you write the book? And then 2, was this your story, or is just an experience of a group of people you may have known?
It was both, because, and I just released this a year ago.
Okay.
Liberated from Church Hurt was 2 years ago, but this was a year ago because people was coming to me that were suicidal. got to get God involved. You can't do this in the natural. You got your spirit. You're made spirit, body, and soul.
Yes.
So you have to understand, although your physical body is here and your spirit is in your physical body, your soul is what's going through the battle, the emotional battle, which is your emotions and your will and your decisions. So when people was coming to me, just confidentially, I would tell them, do you have faith?
Right.
Because you got to start with faith. And so it just prompted me, like, I need to just be a voice about this because I made a difference and they didn't commit suicide. They're suicide survivors, prevention survivors. And so I like, encouraging people that you have purpose, you have something to live for. Church hurt almost just killed me. It almost knocked me down to the ground. I didn't think I would ever recover from
So
that.
how do you recover from church hurt?
I went into prayer. I went in and spoke to God myself. I also read scriptures, which is spiritual food, because your spirit needs to be fed. Just like you have natural food where you need to eat. To survive, you need spiritual food. The Bible says, man shall not live by bread alone.
So with that being said, okay, so we're speaking to a person that may have some spiritual, a spiritual walk or so, but what do we say to that person that does not have a spiritual walk and this is what they're facing? This is reality for them and they don't know how to pick up a book and read a scripture and pray. They don't know how to pray. What if they don't believe in God? Because, we have many people
There's
out
people
there.
they're not faith-based people.
Right.
That's right.
So for that crowd, I would just talk to them on a natural level and tell them my story. Gotta meet people where they are. This is what I went through. I felt crazy. I felt like I didn't want the shades to be up. You just gotta tell them what it is and encourage them, as you said, Miss Natalie, go to support groups.
That's right.
And you said go to psychologists because the natural is good too.
That's right.
And they will find their way if they really want, you know what I mean, to
Yes,
get to
yes,
God.
yes.
But that natural part, you gotta start somewhere.
Yes.
Right.
I wouldn't save always. Okay.
So I
Let
think
the church say amen.
Amen. Amen and hallelujah.
the thing about it is, and what we're trying to get to many of you is that there are many pathways and avenues to, a couple outlets to not end up with suicide on your mind or something that could, potentially in your life. But there are so many routes and ways that we can continue to heal ourselves.
Right.
Because it's exposed where we talk about healing is through transparency. First, you have to see it and call it for what it is.
Absolutely.
And then that's where the true healing can begin.
Yes.
Right.
So
Tell
whether
the truth.
just tell the truth. So whether it's through a faith base or you're going to see an experienced psychologist or therapist, you're starting somewhere.
Right.
You're on the road to recovery.
That's
And
right.
so we want to encourage everyone that you're not out here alone.
Absolutely.
You
And
know?
so and that's where the sexual assault comes together. We use Sexual Assault Month as an option to say that can be the road to suicide if you do not address.
That's right.
Yes.
That trauma can lead to some really, really world-changing results if you do not address them. And we want everybody to be here and to be healthy and take care of themselves and of course you all know that Natalie and I are survivors of abuse and we have to on a daily basis have to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves.
That's right.
And I love that you've written these books that allow for someone to say you're not alone.
Yes.
And that someone else has shared this experience and what do we do from here. So church hurt too, I also want to say is that we put a lot in man.
That's right.
So
Too
a
much
lot of
trust.
that hurt comes from our trust in man versus trusting in our own teachings. So just like you said, so you were able to recover from your church hurt because you started to read the word and started to understand the Bible yourself.
Yes.
And
I made a decision to forgive because that's how
that's
major.
huge.
That
Ooh,
is
that's
huge.
huge.
You cannot
Forgive.
heal
Oh my God,
if you
that's
don't
huge.
forgive.
Oh,
And I'm telling you,
we
that's
gotta
hard.
do a show on
And not
forgiveness.
even just forgiving that person, but what about first
Forgiving
forgiving
yourself.
yourself?
Yes.
It's a
Ooh, that's
first
good.
self forgiveness.
Yes, yes. Yes.
I
yes.
forgive you.
Yes.
I forgive you.
It ain't my fault. I
Right.
didn't do nothing wrong.
Right. The 16-year-old with the old man, married man.
Yes.
Shame on
Talking to
you
me, yes.
and talking to you and making you feel some type of way. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
And if anybody wants to get your book, Suicide Rescue, let's hold that up. Let's come on, let's shout out.
That's right.
And
This is exclusively available on Amazon only.
Okay.
But
Okay.
this one is available on Amazon where books are sold and with Barnes and Noble stores.
perfect.
So, and I got one called Don't Play Church too. That's another element
Ooh.
of what y'all talking about, you know, as far as forgiving and arising over people that are not mature spiritually and just going to get the help that you need naturally and spiritually.
That's
Right.
right.
Because you need both, like you were saying, Natalie. You need to be able to do both and not just be all spiritual. Jesus used parables to teach people things.
Yes,
And he
that's
used
right.
natural parables. So I thank you too for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So you all, you have experienced Dr. Sean Lewis with us today on just touching on some preventative measures on how to handle some sexual assault situations that some may have fallen into, such as church hurt.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then things that can stem from church hurt, such as suicide, and ways that we can, you know, be supportive to one another. And Vern, is there anything that you wanted to say?
Well, no, I just am really appreciative for the transparency. Like Natalie said, exposed is about it being exposed, and transparency is healing.
Yes.
And so being able to come out and tell a story and something like church hurt, you know, people tend to get offended when you say church hurt. I think everybody can some way, shape, or form connect with church hurt, but not everybody is willing to talk about it.
That's right.
And so I definitely appreciate you being able to talk about it. And so we're early April, so you will be seeing more on sexual harassment, sexual assault survivors.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so we want to make sure that we highlight that. And thank you guys for joining us.
Yes,
Thank you, Dr. Sean.
thank you so much, Dr. Sean, for joining us. We will also provide you all with links and information on where you can find Dr. Sean's information and also events that she has coming up. And please stay tuned for more. This is Natalie. This is, you know,
Exposed.
we just so
Right.
exposed, but this is Exposed with
Laverne Badger
and Natalie Hayden.
and Dr. Sean.
Dr. Sean,
Thank you.
so much.
All right.
Have a great Wednesday, guys.
Bye.
Bye.